She had been looking forward to this day for weeks. The thought of finally spending a little time with him. The billionaire she had met through a mutual friend had given her a rare sense of excitement. Life had been difficult lately, juggling work, bills, and her daughters, who were full of energy and always needed attention. A few hours away from her responsibilities seemed like a small luxury she could barely imagine. She got up early that morning, her heart light, despite the lingering tiredness from a sleepless night. Her daughters were still asleep, wrapped in their blankets. Innocent and unaware of the world's weight, she checked her phone one last time, reading his message again, looking forward to tonight. Don't be late. It made her smile. There was something comforting about his words, something that made her feel seen, even by someone who lived in a world so different from hers. She brushed her hair, put on a simple but neat outfit, and prepared a small snack for the girls, not wanting to leave them without anything if they woke up early. She had planned everything from finishing her work tasks early to making sure the girls were cared for. Yet, life had a way of reminding her that she could never plan perfectly. The morning passed with a flurry of small but important tasks. Laundry, emails, phone calls to the school, and making sure her daughters had everything they needed. By noon, she thought she had managed it all. But as the afternoon approached, her younger daughter fell sick. A high fever and a cough that refused to ease made her heart sink. The older daughter was worried and kept asking questions, which only added to her stress. She knew she could not leave the girls alone, not for even an hour. Her heart ached at the thought of disappointing him. She had wanted to go, wanted a brief escape from her daily struggles. But she also could not ignore the needs of her children. Sitting at the kitchen table, she tried to calm herself, taking deep breaths as her daughter lay in her lap. She held her gently, brushing the hair from her forehead and whispering soothing words. Tears filled her eyes, not from weakness, but from the weight of responsibility she carried alone. She looked at the clock and realized it was nearly time for the date she had been eagerly anticipating. Her phone vibrated with his text. "Everything okay? Still coming?" Her heart sank. How could she explain that she had to cancel? How could she let him down after all the anticipation? But her daughters needed her more, and she knew what she had to do. She typed a quick message, her fingers trembling slightly. "I am so sorry. Something came up with my daughters. I cannot make it tonight." She stared at the message, hating that it felt so final. She pressed send and immediately felt a pang of guilt. She imagined his disappointment, the change in his expression, and her chest tightened. She wanted to explain more, to tell him about the sick child, about the chaos of being a single mother, but the words felt inadequate and heavy. She put the phone down and wiped her tears, trying to focus on her daughters. Their small faces looked up at her with trust and reliance, and she knew she had made the right choice. The afternoon became a delicate dance of care. She checked her daughter's temperature, gave her medicine, and made her comfortable on the couch. The older daughter sat beside her, clutching a stuffed animal, offering comfort in her own small way. She kissed their foreheads repeatedly, whispering reassurances. The quiet moments between the bursts of chaos were bittersweet, filled with love and exhaustion. Her mind wandered to him, wondering if he would understand, if he would see the situation for what it was. She hoped he wouldn't think less of her, but she couldn't dwell on it. Right now, her daughter's needs came first. She tried to keep the house calm, making tea and setting up a small area for the girls to watch a favorite show. Yet, the tension in the room was palpable. The younger daughter whimpered, clearly uncomfortable, and the older one hovered, sensing the stress in the air. She held them close, rocking gently, murmuring words of comfort. Her own tears fell silently, a mix of frustration and love. She had learned to be strong, to carry the burden of her family alone. Moments like these reminded her of the weight she bore. Hours passed, and the evening drew closer. She had hoped to find a moment to herself, to breathe and prepare for the brief encounter that had been canceled. Instead, she found herself still managing the children's needs. Her heart heavy with regret for missing the chance to spend time with him. She imagined the restaurant, the lights, the conversation that would have been light and carefree, and a pang of longing cut through her exhaustion. She realized that life's demands were relentless, and she could not always choose the moment she wanted. As night fell, She finally sat down with the girls, tucking them into bed and checking their comfort one last time. She looked at their peaceful faces and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. She had missed an opportunity for herself, yet she had been exactly where she was needed most. She quietly moved to the living room, sitting on the couch, her phone in hand. Another message from him appeared. "I understand. I hope your girls feel better soon." The words were simple, yet they brought a strange sense of relief. He hadn't judged her. He hadn't expressed disappointment. He had shown empathy, something she hadn't expected from someone so wealthy and powerful. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, leaning back and closing her eyes. The tears came again, softer this time. Not from sadness, but from the realization that someone had noticed her struggle without making her feel small. She thought about him, the man she had barely known, yet who had shown patience and understanding. It was a rare feeling, and it reminded her that kindness could come from unexpected places. She looked around her modest living room, at the signs of a day filled with care and worry, and felt a quiet strength rising within her. Her daughters stirred slightly in their sleep, and she smiled, brushing a strand of hair from their faces. She realized that even though the date had been canceled, the day had not been wasted. She had been reminded of her own resilience, her own ability to face challenges, and the importance of love in her life. Money, luxury, and ease could never replace the simple, raw moments of connection and care she shared with her children. As she sat in the dim light, she thought about the future. She didn't know if there would be another opportunity to meet him, another chance for a few hours of escape and connection. But she did know that she had done what mattered most. Her daughters were safe, comforted, and loved. And somehow, in the midst of her exhaustion and tears, she felt a quiet hope. Perhaps someone could see her for who she was. Not just the chaos of her life, but the strength, the love, and the devotion that carried her through each day. The night settled in, and she finally allowed herself to rest, her heart lighter despite the challenges of the day. Somewhere out there, a billionaire who had seen a small glimpse of her life and her heart understood. That thought, simple and unspoken, gave her a gentle comfort as she drifted into sleep. Her daughters close by, safe and cared for. The world was far from perfect, and her life was far from easy. But for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of peace. It was small, fragile, and fleeting. But it was enough to keep her moving forward, one day at a time. With hope quietly burning in her chest, the billionaire had returned to his penthouse after a long day of meetings. The city lights flickered below, reflecting his restless thoughts. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she had seemed excited, nervous, and alive when they had first agreed to meet. He had expected a polite cancellation, a simple excuse, but the message he received was different. It was short, apologetic, and yet it carried the weight of responsibility he could sense immediately. Something told him this wasn't just a casual reason to cancel. There was more behind it. The next morning he decided to check the neighborhood where she lived. He had no particular reason to go there, only a curiosity he couldn't shake. The city was alive with noise and movement, but he noticed a small apartment building tucked away on a quiet street. As he parked, he saw a woman sitting on the steps with two little girls by her side. They were laughing softly, playing a game with small toys. Yet something in the woman's expression made him pause. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her smile seemed forced. She looked tired in a way that spoke of sleepless nights and constant worry. He stayed in his car, watching for a long moment. The sight struck him deeply. He was used to seeing polished images, perfect appearances, and people hiding their vulnerabilities. Yet here was a woman who carried her life openly, who didn't hide her exhaustion or her love for her children. He had seen many things in his life: luxury, power, wealth, but this raw, unguarded human moment felt more real than anything he had experienced. He wanted to approach her, to say something, but he hesitated. He wasn't sure how a billionaire should behave in a situation like this, how his presence might feel to someone who had no connection to his world. For the rest of the day, he couldn't focus on his work. He thought about her laughter, her soft words to her daughters, the way she held them close. There was a vulnerability and strength intertwined in her that fascinated him. He realized he wanted to understand her world, to see life from her perspective. The sight of her crying softly, the memory of that message, stayed with him. He had imagined the dinner they would have shared, the light conversation. And he couldn't help feeling a pull toward the woman who had chosen her children over a moment with him. It wasn't a disappointment in her to him, it was admiration. The billionaire decided to find subtle ways to notice her, to be aware of her life without intruding. He learned her schedule from mutual friends, making mental notes of her routines. He began to see patterns in how she managed her household, how she cared for her children, and how she carried herself despite the constant pressure. He realized the kind of work, the invisible labor that went into raising children alone, and it struck him profoundly. He had never truly appreciated the quiet heroism of single parents, never seen the emotional toll it took or the courage it required. Watching her, even from a distance, opened a part of his heart he had rarely explored. Days passed, and he started leaving small, anonymous gestures of support. A package of essentials arrived for her children, some books and toys, nothing extravagant but thoughtful. He made sure they were items that would be useful and bring joy. He did it quietly, wanting no recognition, only the satisfaction of easing her burden a little. She received the packages with confusion and curiosity, wondering who had noticed her struggles and chosen to act. She didn't know the billionaire was behind it, but she felt a strange warmth, a reminder that someone in the world cared enough to notice. One rainy afternoon, she was struggling to get her daughters ready for school. Their coats were missing, homework was forgotten, and the younger one refused to eat. She felt overwhelmed, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. As she stood in the small hallway, holding one daughter while adjusting the other's shoes, a small delivery arrived. A neatly wrapped package contained exactly what the girls needed, with a note that simply read, "For your little ones, with care." She looked around, expecting to see someone, but there was no one. Her heart lifted slightly. She didn't know who it was, but she felt noticed, seen, supported in a way that was rare. The billionaire watched from afar occasionally, always careful not to intrude. He didn't want to frighten her or make her feel obligated. He only wanted to see her smile, to know that his small actions could ease her day. He saw how hard she worked, how much she sacrificed, and it drew him closer in thought. He wasn't used to being emotionally invested in someone he barely knew, but the purity of her care for her children, the rawness of her emotions, and the honesty of her life fascinated him. He realized he had been missing the kind of human connection money couldn't buy. She started to notice the patterns. Packages arrived on days she felt stretched thin. Books came when she mentioned her daughter's needs. Small comforts appeared without explanation. It gave her hope, a sense of being watched over in a chaotic world. She told herself it was coincidence, luck, or the kindness of a stranger. Yet deep down, she felt a quiet comfort, sensed that someone understood what it meant to be constantly giving, constantly sacrificing. Life had been hard, but these moments reminded her that there was still goodness, still someone who cared, even in the smallest gestures. The billionaire, meanwhile, began to take mental notes about her personality. He observed how she smiled at her children, how she laughed when they made silly jokes, how she managed conflicts with patience despite fatigue. He realized that true strength was not in wealth, status, or power, but in quiet moments of perseverance. In acts of love that required no recognition. He felt admiration growing into something deeper, an emotional connection that surprised him. He had been fascinated by business, deals, and control. But now, he found himself fascinated by life itself, as lived by her. One evening, he saw her sitting in the small park near her apartment, reading a story to her daughters under a dim streetlight. It was raining lightly, but she didn't rush them home. She held one child close, and the other sat beside her, eyes wide with wonder. The billionaire stood across the street, watching quietly. He realized he was witnessing something rare and beautiful, a mother's love in its purest form. No glamour, no pretense, just devotion and care. He felt a strange desire to intervene, to offer help, yet he restrained himself. He wanted to be part of her life, but he also wanted it to be genuine. free of influence or expectation. His fascination with her life grew. He saw the simple joy she brought to her children's days, the careful planning and sacrifices she made daily. He understood the exhaustion behind the smiles, the constant balancing act of a single parent. In his world, wealth and influence solved problems, but they could never replicate the resilience and heart he now saw in her. He began reflecting on his own life, on the emptiness behind the glamour, and he realized how much he had missed by not valuing the small, authentic human moments that defined a person's character. Days turned into weeks, and the anonymous gestures continued. She began to smile more, feel less alone, and slowly the weight of her daily struggles became lighter. She didn't know the identity of the person helping her, yet she felt a sense of connection, as if someone understood the depth of her life. It gave her hope, not just for herself, but for the idea that kindness existed in unexpected forms. She allowed herself to imagine that someone out there saw her efforts, her tears, her laughter, and valued them. It gave her strength to face each day with renewed energy. The billionaire, still observing quietly, realized that his actions had impact beyond what he had imagined. He saw the difference a few small gestures could make, the ripple effect of understanding and empathy. He had entered her world as an outsider, yet, through care and attention, he had begun to become part of it in subtle ways. Each moment of her life he witnessed left an impression, teaching him lessons he had never learned in boardrooms or luxury offices. He understood the importance of presence, of witnessing, and of valuing human connection above material wealth. One afternoon, saw her cry quietly on the steps outside her building. She held her youngest daughter, brushing tears from her own cheeks, the older one clinging close. He realized then that her life was not easy, that every day came with battles that no amount of money could ease. He felt a deep sense of empathy, a desire to offer support without changing the authenticity of her life. He knew then that his fascination had grown into something more profound, a genuine care for her well-being, her happiness, and the joy of her children. He left quietly, deciding not to approach just yet, understanding that some connections had to develop naturally. His observation had taught him patience, humility, and the value of silent support. He knew that the next step would require courage and sensitivity, but for now, he was content to simply witness her strength, to understand her world, and to appreciate the quiet beauty of her life. The memory of her laughter, the sound of her soothing words to her children, and the sight of her resilience stayed with him, shaping the way he viewed life, love, and the meaning of true wealth. The small gestures began to have a noticeable impact on her life. She still didn't know who was behind them, but the timing of each gift, each thoughtful surprise, gave her comfort during moments of exhaustion. One afternoon, she returned from work to find a basket of fresh fruit and healthy snacks waiting on her doorstep. A note attached said simply, "For your girls, to keep them happy and healthy." She stared at it for a long moment, touched by the thoughtfulness, then smiled softly, imagining someone cared enough to notice the small struggles she faced every day. Her daughters were delighted, exploring the contents of the basket and chattering excitedly about each item. She watched them laugh and realized that these small acts had lifted the mood of her home, bringing light to ordinary days that often felt heavy. She wondered who could be so considerate, and part of her hoped it wasn't someone who wanted anything in return. It was rare in her life to experience kindness so quietly, without expectation, without strings attached. The billionaire observed these moments quietly. He didn't want recognition. He only wanted her to feel supported. He saw the relief in her eyes, the subtle relaxation of her shoulders, and the way her daughter's laughter filled the space. It gave him satisfaction he had never found in wealth or power. He realized that even the smallest gestures could ripple into something meaningful, touching lives in ways he had never anticipated. His respect for her grew each day, quiet admiration rooted in her strength and love. One evening, she faced another challenge. A storm had knocked out the electricity in their neighborhood, and she struggled to keep her daughters calm and safe. She lit candles and tried to make the situation feel less frightening, but she could see the worry in her older daughter's eyes and the fear in her younger ones. At that moment, A small package arrived at her door. Inside were blankets, flashlights, and a few small toys, enough to comfort her children and make the evening more manageable. She felt a rush of gratitude and a strange sense of hope. Someone had noticed her struggle, and in a way she didn't fully understand, she felt less alone. Over the next few weeks, the anonymous support became a quiet constant in her life. Packages, helpful notes, and thoughtful gestures arrived, always timed perfectly, always practical, always considerate. She started to look forward to these little surprises, feeling a connection to an unseen presence who cared. Her daughters began to enjoy the routine of receiving the packages, finding excitement in the mystery. It became a small, shared secret between the mother and her children, a source of joy in their otherwise busy and sometimes stressful lives. The billionaire continued to observe, careful not to reveal himself prematurely. He saw how the support eased her daily burdens, how it allowed her to smile more freely, and how her daughters thrived in moments of unexpected comfort. He began to learn more about her, about the life she led, the choices she made, and the sacrifices that were invisible to most people. Every detail fascinated him: the way she balanced work and parenting, the way she managed crises without complaint, and the small, creative ways she brought happiness to her children. He noticed her resilience and the deep bond she shared with her daughters. Even when tired, she maintained patience and warmth, showing love in ways that money could never replace. He admired how she never let her exhaustion overshadow her children's happiness, how she managed to keep their world safe and bright despite her own struggles. The more he observed, the more he understood that true strength came from empathy, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication, qualities he rarely encountered in his own world. One afternoon, he saw her sitting on the steps outside her building, reading a story to her daughters. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow on the small courtyard. The older daughter listened intently, eyes wide with imagination, while the younger one leaned against her mother, comforted by her presence. He felt a deep sense of admiration and a strange longing to step forward, to reveal himself, yet he hesitated. He wanted her to be at ease, to feel his support without pressure, without the complications that might come from his presence. The mother, meanwhile, began to feel a subtle change within herself. The constant small gestures of care, though anonymous, had lifted a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. She found herself smiling more, laughing more freely with her daughters, and approaching daily challenges with renewed energy. She didn't know who was behind the kindness, but the impact was undeniable. It reminded her that even in a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving, there were still people who noticed and cared. Her daughters sensed the positive shift as well. They began to ask questions about the mysterious helper, imagining stories and creating games around the idea of a secret friend watching over them. The mother joined in, sharing the fun while keeping the mystery alive. It became a small, magical part of their lives, a thread of hope and joy woven into their everyday routine. The presence of kindness, even unseen, reminded them all that life could hold surprises and beauty. Even in ordinary moments, the billionaire watched these interactions, feeling a growing connection to her and her children. He realized that he had become emotionally invested in their well-being, that he cared deeply about the happiness and safety of their lives. He began to reflect on his own experiences, on the moments in his life where he had been disconnected from genuine human connection, and he recognized a longing he had not fully acknowledged before. Observing her life taught him lessons about humility, empathy, and the importance of caring for others without expectation. He began to understand that wealth and status could never replicate the intimacy of daily life, the quiet moments of care and love that define true happiness. Each smile, each moment of laughter, and each small triumph she experienced became significant to him. He realized that the connection he felt was not just fascination, it was a deep appreciation for the authenticity of her life and the courage it took to live it fully. He admired her for her strength, her patience, and her unwavering dedication to her children. One day, she faced a particularly difficult challenge. Her youngest daughter had fallen ill, and she felt overwhelmed trying to manage her responsibilities at work and at home. Exhausted, She sat on the floor of their apartment, holding her child close and trying to calm her. The older daughter clung to her side, sensing her mother's stress. At that moment, a delivery arrived. Inside were supplies to care for the sick child, comforting items for the older daughter, and a note that simply said, "You are not alone. You are doing well." Tears filled her eyes as she read the note. She felt a wave of relief and gratitude, touched by the thoughtfulness of someone who understood her struggles. She didn't know who it was, but the gesture reminded her that she wasn't facing life entirely on her own. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of support, a feeling that someone acknowledged her effort, her love, and her strength. The small act of kindness became a powerful source of encouragement, giving her the strength to continue through the challenges she faced daily. The billionaire, watching quietly from a distance, felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He realized that the connection he had formed with her, even anonymously, had deep meaning. He had witnessed her resilience, her love, and her strength, and he had found a way to contribute positively to her life without intruding. He understood the significance of supporting someone quietly. It's allowing them to feel empowered and seen without feeling obligated or judged. His respect and admiration for her deepened, and he recognized that the true value of wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the ability to make a meaningful difference in someone's life. As days turned into weeks, as the anonymous gestures continued, each act of care, each small surprise, strengthened the bond between them, even though she did not yet know the source. She began to feel a quiet sense of hope and connection, a reassurance that someone noticed her, valued her effort, and cared for her and her children. The experience reminded her that kindness could appear in unexpected ways, and that the world, despite its challenges, still held beauty and compassion. The billionaire realized that his patience had been rewarding. By observing her life, understanding her struggles, God and providing support without expectation, he had formed a genuine connection. He had witnessed moments of vulnerability, resilience, and love that had left a lasting impression on him. He understood that human connection, empathy, and quiet support were more valuable than any luxury he had ever known. His admiration for her grew, and he began to consider the possibility of revealing himself, of offering his presence directly, but only when the timing felt right and natural. In the quiet moments of reflection, he recognized the lessons she had taught him about life, love, and the meaning of true strength. He understood that the most profound connections often came from shared humanity, from acts of care and kindness, and from the ability to witness and appreciate someone's authentic life. He had learned to see beyond wealth and status, to value the courage, dedication, and love that defined her existence. Through these weeks of quiet observation and subtle intervention, both of their lives began to change. She felt supported, hopeful, and seen in ways she had not experienced before. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, admiration, an emotional connection that challenged his previous notions of success and happiness. Their stories had begun to intertwine, not through words or overt gestures, but through understanding, empathy, and shared humanity. And in this silent, gentle way, the foundation for a deeper connection was quietly being built. A connection that held the promise of understanding, trust, and perhaps something more profound in the days to come. The day finally came when he decided it was time to step out of the shadows. He had watched from a distance for weeks, seeing her strength, her exhaustion, and her unwavering love for her children. He had been touched by her resilience and inspired by her quiet courage. He knew that simply watching and helping from afar was no longer enough. He wanted to connect with her directly, to show her that the kindness she had received was genuine and that someone truly cared about her life. He understood the need for patience and sensitivity, and he hoped he would approach her in a way that felt safe and respectful. He arrived at her apartment building in the late afternoon, a time when the golden light of the sun softened the streets and gave the small neighborhood a warm glow. He carried nothing more than himself, choosing to leave the luxury and grandeur of his usual life behind. His goal was simple: to offer support and understanding, not to impress or overwhelm. He knew that the only way to reach her heart was through sincerity and respect, she was outside with her daughters, helping them with a small art project before dinner. They were laughing, sharing crayons and paper, completely absorbed in their own world. She didn't notice him at first, focused on keeping her children happy and engaged. He stood quietly, watching, and felt a sense of awe at the scene before him. This was her life, simple, chaotic, full of love, and entirely unfiltered. He had never seen anything so real and so beautiful. Finally, he approached cautiously, his hands relaxed at his sides to show he meant no harm. "Hello," he said softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up, surprised by the sudden voice, and instinctively held her daughters a little closer. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in the stranger standing in front of her. There was no immediate recognition, only curiosity and a hint of wariness. He offered a gentle smile, trying to convey kindness and sincerity. "I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to meet you in person and make sure you and your daughters are okay." She hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Her mind raced with questions. Who was he? Why did he care? And why now, after weeks of mystery and support? She glanced at her daughters, seeing their innocent curiosity mirrored in their eyes. She decided to respond cautiously. "I thank you," she said softly, "but I don't understand. Who are you?" He took a small step forward, maintaining a respectful distance. "I've been helping you and your daughters," he said quietly. "I didn't want to reveal myself too soon because I didn't want you to feel pressured or judged. I just wanted to offer support when you needed it most. My name is not important right now. What matters is that you're not alone in this." Her eyes filled with a mix of surprise, relief, and disbelief. She had suspected someone was behind the small acts of kindness, but she had never imagined it would be someone who would approach her in person. She took a deep breath, trying to process the flood of emotions. Gratitude, curiosity, and a sense of vulnerability swirled within her. "You've been helping us?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "All this time?" He nodded, keeping his tone gentle and calm. "Yes. I've been watching from afar, making sure you had what you needed. I saw how hard you were working, the sacrifices you made for your daughters, and I wanted to do something meaningful, something that could make your life a little easier. I've been inspired by your strength and love." Tears welled in her eyes as she processed his words. She felt an overwhelming sense of relief and gratitude, but also a vulnerability she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. She realized that he wasn't there to judge her or to control her life. He was simply acknowledging her efforts and offering genuine support. Her defenses softened, and she allowed herself to speak honestly. I didn't know anyone noticed. Life has been so hard lately, and sometimes I feel like I'm carrying everything alone. You've made things easier, even without knowing me personally." He smiled softly, moved by her honesty and the trust she was showing. "I didn't want recognition. I just wanted you to feel supported, to know that someone cares. You've been doing an incredible job raising your daughters, even in the face of challenges that would overwhelm most people. I hope you understand that what you're doing matters." She looked at him, the weight of her exhaustion slowly lifting as a new sense of understanding settled in. The walls she had built to protect herself began to crumble, replaced by a cautious trust. "Thank you," she said quietly, tears streaming down her cheeks. I really needed to hear that. Sometimes I feel like no one notices, like I'm invisible. But you've seen us. You've seen me?" He took a small step closer, careful to respect her space. "Yes, I've seen you. And I want you to know that it's okay to let yourself be seen. It's okay to rely on others, to accept help when it's offered. You don't have to carry everything alone." She nodded, feeling a warmth and comfort she hadn't experienced in years. The honesty and empathy in his words broke through the barriers she had erected, though she allowed herself to breathe, to release the tension that had built up over countless days of responsibility and worry. Her daughters, sensing the calm in their mother, relaxed as well, curling up beside her and enjoying the rare moment of quiet connection. They spent the next hour talking softly, sharing small stories and laughter. He asked about her daughters, their interests, their school, and her own life. She responded with honesty, telling him about the challenges and joys of raising 2 children alone. The conversation was simple but meaningful, a chance for her to be heard and understood without judgment or expectation. She felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, and she realized that the act of being seen and acknowledged was more powerful than any material gift. He listened carefully, offering gentle encouragement and validation. "You're doing a remarkable job," he said. "The love and dedication you show your daughters is extraordinary. You inspire people, even when you don't realize it." She smiled softly, feeling the truth in his words. For the first time in a long while, she felt recognized, not for her appearance or social standing, but for the heart and effort she poured into her life and her children. The moment was simple yet profound, a reminder that human connection and empathy could create a sense of belonging and hope. As the evening grew darker, he prepared to leave, not wanting to impose further. "I should go now," he said gently. "But I want you to know that I'll always be here to support you in whatever way you need. You're not alone." She nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude and hope. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. "For everything, I hope we can continue to talk. I feel like I've finally met someone who understands." He smiled, a sense of fulfillment and peace settling over him. "We will. And remember, your strength and love are what matter most. Never forget that." With a final nod, he left quietly, giving her space to process the encounter and absorb the rare feeling of being seen and valued. After he left, she sat with her daughters, holding them close and feeling a sense of warmth and security she hadn't experienced in a long time. She reflected on the past weeks, the anonymous gestures, the small acts of kindness, and now the direct connection with the person behind them. She realized that life had a way of surprising her, of showing her that even in the midst of struggle, there was hope, empathy, and genuine human connection waiting to be discovered. Her daughters sensed the change in her. Noticing the calmness and warmth in her demeanor, they hugged her tightly, her small hands and innocent eyes reminding her of the joy and love that formed the foundation of her life. She smiled, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and hope. The encounter with him had not only provided practical support, but it also reminded her of the importance of being seen, valued, and understood. That night, she tucked her daughters into bed and reflected on the day's events. She realized that trust, empathy, and genuine connection were powerful forces, capable of healing and inspiring even in the most challenging circumstances. She felt a quiet gratitude for the billionaire who had stepped into her life with care and sensitivity, showing her that kindness could come in unexpected forms and that she was never truly alone. The evening ended with a sense of hope, warmth, and a quiet promise that their connection, built on respect and understanding, would continue to grow and evolve in the days to come. The days after their first direct meeting were filled with a gentle, unspoken understanding. He continued to respect her space, never imposing. But their occasional messages and thoughtful gestures reminded her that someone cared deeply for her and her daughters. It wasn't about extravagance or wealth. It was about attention, empathy, and genuine human connection. She began to feel lighter, more confident in herself and her ability to navigate the challenges of her life. Her daughters noticed the change in her. She laughed more, spoke more softly, and allowed herself to relax in ways she hadn't allowed for years. They responded with renewed energy, their own spirits lifted by the warmth and security radiating from their mother. Their small apartment, once heavy with the stress of daily survival, now felt like a place of safety, love, and hope. Simple routines, cooking dinner together, reading bedtime stories, or sharing quiet moments on the couch became treasured times. She felt a deep satisfaction in seeing her daughters thrive emotionally and socially. And the subtle support she received played a quiet role in making that possible. He observed from afar, feeling a growing sense of connection to their little family. He admired how she managed life, juggling work, parenting, and personal responsibilities with patience and grace. She was no longer just someone he had admired from a distance. She had become a person he cared for deeply, someone whose happiness mattered to him. But he understood that trust and comfort had to be earned, and that rushing would risk disrupting the delicate balance of her life. So he chose to remain patient, offering gestures that were supportive without being intrusive. One weekend, decided to invite them to a local park for a casual day outdoors. He arranged for a picnic basket, toys for the children, and a quiet spot where they could enjoy the sunshine without feeling exposed. He reached out to her with a simple message: if you'd like a little escape, there's a day planned for you and the girls. No pressure, just fun. She hesitated for a moment, feeling nervous about spending time with someone she barely knew. But she also felt a sense of curiosity and cautious hope. After a few minutes, she agreed, trusting him to respect her and her children. The day at the park was filled with laughter, shared stories, and quiet moments of observation. He watched as she encouraged her daughters to play together, solve small disagreements, and express themselves freely. She moved through the day with patience and warmth, demonstrating the qualities he had admired from afar. They played games, shared sandwiches, and listened to the sounds of nature around them. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely relaxed. Free from the constant pressures of responsibility and obligation, her daughters thrived in this environment, their laughter echoing through the park and filling her with joy. During a quiet moment, he sat beside her on a blanket, careful to maintain a sense of ease and normalcy. "You're amazing," he said softly. "I see the strength and love you pour into every day, and I admire it more than words can express." She smiled, feeling the sincerity in his words. "Thank you," she replied quietly. "Sometimes it feels like no one notices, like I'm just getting by. But you make me feel seen, really seen, and that's more valuable than anything else." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "You deserve to be seen and appreciated. The love you give is extraordinary, and it shouldn't go unnoticed." The afternoon passed with simple joy, playing, talking, and enjoying each other's company. There were moments of quiet reflection, where they shared small pieces of their personal experiences, discussing challenges, hopes, and dreams. She began to realize that he was not there to judge or control her life, but to offer understanding and companionship. His presence was a reminder that genuine human connection could transcend differences in background, wealth, and life experience. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened naturally. He continued to support her in small, meaningful ways, and she responded with openness and trust. They shared dinners, casual walks, and occasional outings that allowed her daughters to feel included and cherished. The billionaire learned more about her daily life, the realities of parenting, and the challenges she faced. Each moment brought new appreciation for her resilience, her patience, and her ability to nurture love, even in difficult circumstances. She, in turn, discovered that he was more than the image of wealth and power she had first imagined. He was attentive, empathetic, and genuinely interested in her world. She began to enjoy his company, feeling safe and respected. His willingness to step into her life without demanding anything in return helped her trust him. And she realized that his presence was a source of support rather than pressure. She could share moments of joy and vulnerability without fear of judgment. Their relationship continued to grow, rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and shared humanity. He admired her for the strength she displayed every day, and she appreciated his patience and empathy. The daughters responded positively to his presence, gradually seeing him as someone who cared about their happiness and well-being. Small moments, a shared joke, a comforting word, a playful interaction strengthened their bond and brought them closer together. One evening, as they were sitting together after dinner, the mother reflected on how much her life had changed in the past few weeks. She realized that the initial fear and hesitation she had felt when he first approached her had been replaced by trust and hope. She had allowed herself to feel supported and cared for, and in doing so, had discovered the value of connection and empathy. The experience reminded her that even in the midst of life's challenges, there were people who could bring light, understanding, and joy. He noticed her reflection and offered a gentle smile. "You've done so much for your daughters," he said. "You've shown them what love, resilience, and dedication look like. And you've done it all without expecting recognition. That's something truly remarkable." She nodded, feeling the truth in his words. "I try my best," she said softly. And having someone notice, someone who understands, makes all the difference. It's not about gifts or money. It's about seeing and valuing each other. He reached out and gently squeezed her hand, a silent gesture of support and connection. "Exactly," he said. "And I hope you know that I see you, and I value you. All of you." As the weeks turned into months, their bond continued to flourish. He remained attentive, supportive, and respectful, never imposing, always encouraging. She felt a renewed sense of confidence, knowing that she was not alone and that genuine care existed in her life. Her daughters thrived in this environment of love and stability, feeling secure and valued. The family's daily life became more joyful, filled with laughter, warmth, and meaningful connections. Together, they discovered that the strongest bonds were not formed through wealth, status, or material possessions, but through empathy, understanding, and genuine care. He had entered her life as a supportive presence, and she had embraced his kindness. Allowing herself and her daughters to feel the impact of human connection, they had built a foundation of trust and respect, demonstrating that compassion and patience could create lasting change in people's lives. One quiet evening, as the daughters slept peacefully, she sat beside him and reflected on their journey. "I never imagined that someone would understand my life, my struggles, and my heart," she said softly. "You've shown me that kindness and empathy exist, and that I can trust someone to care without judgment." He smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You've taught me just as much," he replied. "I've learned to appreciate the quiet strength of human connection, the power of love and resilience, and the importance of patience and understanding. You've changed my perspective on what truly matters in life." In that moment, they shared a quiet understanding, a mutual recognition of the impact they had on each other's lives. Their journey had been one of patience, observation, and gentle support, leading to a connection rooted in authenticity and care. They had discovered that real wealth lay not in material possessions, but in the bonds formed through empathy, trust, and shared humanity. The mother felt a profound sense of gratitude, knowing that she had not only received support, but had also gained a friend and companion who respected and valued her life and her daughters. The billionaire felt fulfillment and joy, having contributed positively to a life full of love, resilience, and hope. Together they embraced the promise of continued connection, understanding that their bond was built on the foundation of respect, care, and genuine appreciation for each other's lives. As the night settled in, they sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. Life remained challenging, but the presence of understanding, empathy, and support provided a sense of peace and hope. The daughters slept soundly, their world filled with love and security. And for the mother and the billionaire, the knowledge that they had found each other in a world full of uncertainty brought a sense of warmth, belonging, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Their lives had intertwined in a way that was meaningful, human, and transformative, demonstrating the profound impact of care, patience, and genuine connection.